on another note, on obesity. There's a big story in the Sunday Times today about Oprah Winfrey, who has a new book out, and in it she talks about the 5 decades she spent torturing herself about being overweight, and whole of America, obviously she's been hugely famous for a long time, picking her apart for her weight. She said making fun of her size was a national sport in America. She was ridiculed on talk shows and tabloid covers, labelled bumpy, lumpy and downright dumpy by a fashion critic in the 90s. And apparently in the late 90s, Anna Wintour of Vogue fame suggested she lose 1.5 stone before appearing on a Vogue cover. So she had decades of anxiety about this before she saw obesity as a disease. So before she saw obesity as a disease, she refused weight loss injections, believing that it was her responsibility to fix it herself. And the light bulb moment for her came in July 2023, when she was part of a panel discussion with weight loss experts, and she came to understand, she says, that overeating doesn't cause obesity. Obesity causes overeating. If you have obesity in your gene pool, it's not your fault. Now, the article goes on to say, though, that in the UK, where 64% of adults are overweight or obese, the government's focus remains on personal responsibility and lifestyle choices. We're going to speak about this now with Sarah LeBrock, founder and director of All About Obesity. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Do you agree with Oprah Winfrey that obesity is a disease?
Yes, absolutely. And it's just great to hear more people talking about it, because I talk about this a lot in the work that I do. And it's about trying to change the narrative really around obesity, because I think for so long we've thought it is personal responsibility and it's a simple eat less, move more. But what Oprah is trying to say is that it is kind of eat less, move more, but for some people it's a lot harder to eat less. And that's the bit here, is that the why is it so much harder for people to eat less potentially. And it is because the body of somebody that lives with obesity is actually dysregulated. So it's not functioning the same as somebody that doesn't live with obesity. And so therefore those choices around choosing certain foods, feeling full when you've eaten, craving certain foods, etc., are much harder for somebody that lives with obesity. So absolutely agree with Oprah on that statement for sure.
You say someone that lives with obesity. Is this scientifically proven that actually there is something different in the brain chemistry of people who tend to be obese?
Yeah, so what we know is, so the medications that everyone's talking about, so the GLP-1 medications, so the Wegovys, the Manjaro, etc., the reason that they're working and being successful is because what they do is they're regulating the gut hormones in somebody's gut, basically. And so what we know is when someone lives with obesity, and I say lives with obesity because it's a way of describing someone living with a chronic condition. We've used the word obese for years, but obese is kind of like a really stigmatizing term, so that's why I use the term living with obesity. And what we know is that people that do live with obesity have these gut hormones are out of sync, basically. And so what the GLP-1 molecules are doing is just bringing those back to a normal level, so that you do feel fuller quicker, not as hungry, and the digestion of the food, etc., is slowed down, and all of those kind of things. So that's what it's doing. So we know scientifically that there is this kind of dysregulation going on in someone's body that lives in. So basically, when I say lives with obesity, they have a BMI over 30, they have more fat mass, etc. That's what's causing the imbalance.
But Sarah, how do we square that though? If we're saying that this is because of someone's wiring basically, and they are born with this disease of obesity, how do we square that with the fact that obesity rates are consistently higher in lower income groups? So children in the most deprived areas are twice as likely to be obese as those in the least deprived areas. If it's just a sort of genetic thing, something we're born with, why would that pattern exist if it's not to do with culture and lifestyle?
Yeah, it's not as simple as just down to something you're born with. Like you are dealt a set of cards when you're born. Everybody is, regarding like genetics across many different factors. Obesity genes are some of the genes that people have. But what we now know is that the environment that we live in plays such a huge part in this as well. So we live in something called an obesogenic environment. So that means it's geared up to kind of for people to live with obesity more than not. And we see this with the food companies, the food advertising. We know we've just seen junk food advertising banned before 9 p.m, etc. We know this kind of drives this kind of narrative around choosing ultra processed food and higher fat foods, etc. And that's why we know that people that live in lower deprivation areas, etc., lower income families, they can't afford the healthier food alternatives. And people kind of really struggle to accept that. But ultimately, we know there are areas in this country that have food deserts, and that means that people can't get access to fresh fruit and veg and etc. in their localities. So what they have to do then is pick foods so they can... Yes, 100%.
I mean, I accept that there may be some areas where the temptation's more, but I've never been anywhere where you're not near, a Tesco Express or something where they sell fresh fruit and vegetables.
No, there are areas where literally, like, the nearest area to them within a walking distance, for instance, because we're making assumptions that people can jump in a car and drive to a supermarket, or they can get a bus, but some people literally can't even afford a bus fare, or have a car, or have transport. So it's within their kind of walking distance. So I don't know, a mile radius of their homes, for instance. And sometimes it is just like a corner shop, or takeaways, or fast food shops, etc., or a frozen food shop, and they just can't get access to that fresh fruit and veg, which I know is shocking to lots of people, and lots of us are privileged that isn't the case, but there are lots of people that are living that way. So actually to access those foods is much harder. So I think what we need to do is get the government to make it that is not the case in this country, and that people can...
absolutely, yeah. I think we can all get behind that. Just one thing though, finally, Sarah, well, if I say finally, but it's a rather big one. I mean, I suppose some people listening to this will be like, well, if we say it's a disease, that basically lets people off the hook. It says it's not your responsibility at all. It's nothing to do with your personal choices. And actually, don't we want to be encouraging people to take responsibility? And I accept that it will be harder for some than others, but is this, by saying it's a disease, isn't that sort of saying it's rather defeatist? Because unless we're going to be providing fat jabs to absolutely everyone in the country, which maybe that's, or weight loss jabs I should say, maybe that's what you're all suggesting we should do, don't we need people to take some responsibility rather than thinking, well, this really has nothing to do with me?
No, I agree, but I think everybody should take responsibility for their health. And I think this is the bit we need to focus on, is if we focus on health, then I think the whole population should be doing things slightly better. Whether we're sleeping better, whether we can be less stressed, whether we can move a little bit more, whether we can eat a better diet, etc. It's around looking at that. But I think with obesity, we seem to just point fingers of blame to someone to say, well, you're not doing something very well, and if you just had better willpower, etc. But what we know, it's not about willpower. It's about someone's body not working the same as somebody else's. So that's where the disease bit kind of recognises that. So I think if we can understand that it's just like another chronic condition like asthma or diabetes, we don't look at someone like that and say, oh, I just wish they could just breathe a bit better, actually, and then therefore they don't need their inhaler if they've got asthma, for instance, or it's kind of like we don't do that. So why do we do that?
It's not quite as straightforward as that, though, is it, Sarah?
Well, no. I mean, obviously, obesity is hugely complex and multifaceted, so it's not a simple case of someone just doing something. But what I'm trying to say is, I think everybody in the country should be taking more responsibility for their overall health anyway. And the things that we would tell people living with obesity to do are things everyone should be doing. So things like trying to eat as nutrient-dense foods as we possibly can, to move a little bit more, to try and be less stressed, to sleep better. All of these lifestyle kind of choices that people should be making are what everybody in the population should be doing.
Yep.
I think the bit we've got to recognise is, for some people, if they're living with obesity and then they're living with a chronic disease condition, it's not going to be as simple as that. So actually having that stigma,
they may need some extra help. Sorry, Sarah, we have to stop there just because we've run away over time. And thank you so much for your time, Sarah LeBrock, founder and director of All About Obesity. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The answer is boiled eggs. I'm going to say the answer is I could lose a few pounds myself, but I've always found that that's the way with the willpower. If you start, unless you're a vegan, if you start with a couple of boiled eggs, gets you on your way to not overeating the rest of the day. That's my 2 penneth on that. We're taking your calls and your texts on the regulation of AI and social media. Do you think we should be clamping down harder on social media, especially in the light of all this grim grok AI stuff, the bikini images? And should we be banning social media for under 16s or under 18s? Give me a call, 0345 606 0973. You're listening to Claire Foges on LBC. The time is 8:50.
Number 9 on LBC, the Consumer Hour, leading Britain's conversation. Next on LBC.
At Kia, we have an award-winning range of electric cars for you to discover. From the compact SUV, the Kia EV3, and our latest hatchback, the Kia EV4, to our stylish new Kia EV5, the all-electric family SUV. Discover what driving electric really means. And if you order any Kia electric car by March 31st, you'll enjoy your first 2 services free. Search Discover Your Kia EV to book your test drive today. Kia. Movement that inspires. T's and C's apply. You are not an egg. You should not be put in a box. But when it comes to retirement advice, that's how some people get treated. Put in a one-size-fits-all box. Not at
offer. The new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra brings every winter sport moment to life as crisp as freshly laid snow. With its stunning 6.9-inch dynamic AMOLED display, razor-sharp resolution. But here's the real win. Claim £250 cashback, conveniently available to spend in your Samsung wallet. Purchase before January 29th from a participating retailer. Claim on the Samsung website within 30 days of purchase. T's and C's apply.
Leading Britain's conversation with Claire Foges. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Just a couple of responses to that call we've just had on obesity with Sarah LeBrock. Tony says, it's beautifully coincided coming together. Tony says, this caller is a breath of fresh air, but it's time to switch off before all the holier-than-thou fat fascists pitch in with their ignorant messages. Followed by a message from Chris saying, not buying this whole they're obese because they can't afford the bus to get fresh fruit and veg. Why don't they walk, burn some calories at the same time? Capturing the varied voices we get here on LBC. Karina says, this is back on the subject of social media regulation and AI. What is this man talking about? I think she's talking about Dr. Dean Burnett, who was on the top of the hour, who said that there wasn't really a clear connection between poor mental health and young people and smartphone use. She says, what is this man talking about? I'm with you, Claire. There's definitely a connection with smartphones and mental illness. Just the fact that kids are staying in more, speaking to people online more than being outside interacting face to face. Indeed, Karina, could not agree with you more. To your calls now. Joshua is in Edinburgh. Good evening, Joshua. What do you think about this?
Hi, Claire. Look, just to start off, I've never agreed with the Tories once, but I think this is maybe one of the best policies that they've ever, or the best policy ideas that they've ever introduced. I'm 23 now, so I wouldn't be affected by the proposed ban, but I would put it up to 18, and I think that having kind of grown up and gone through high school, the age of social media as a process, it has nothing but a negative effect on me and people around me, I would say.
So what of my caller earlier that has just been introduced by that texter there? Apologies to Dr. Burnett, he's not here to defend himself, but he was saying that, this has had great positives for young people, it's helped to connect them in new ways and so on. What do you make of that?
I definitely think there's an aspect of that. I think especially during the pandemic, that really helped us all kind of keep in touch and keep a bit more stable perhaps when we're thinking, but I think overall it's just got a negative effect. I remember being 13, 14, and thinking about what to post and when you post it. You'd Google the times that were best to post for the most engagement, and if something didn't get enough likes, you'd take it down, and then you would go to school the next day, people would be talking about it, and it would just be it's just actually looking back now, it's crazy how clear it was quite a bad idea to have social media at that age was, but my mum and dad tried to shelter me from it as much as they could, and if I've had the sheltered experience, then I'd hate to think what an unfiltered experience would look like.
So your mum and dad, what did they do to shelter you from it?
I was very late to it compared to a lot of my peers. A lot of my peers were kind of getting on social media at the end of primary school. In the junior years of high school, I was probably about 3 years for in Scotland, which is about 14 or 15 before I really got anything. And then there was the most important one was Snapchat. That was the one that everybody was on. I didn't get that until I was quite a bit older, maybe 16 or 17, whereas a lot of my peers had that kind of from 12, 13 really.
So what's been, because I can remember well being sort of 14, 15, 16 years old, and I remember doing things like I was sort of noting down all the things I didn't really like about my appearance and that sort of thing, sticking out ears and this, that and the other. In fact, I don't remember it. I remember I found this list years later. I was like, what? Lovely, Claire. But you're at that age when you're sort of picking yourself apart, comparing yourself with your peers. Anyway, I cannot imagine doing it now when you are sort of seeing pictures of your classmates. Say you're having a quiet day in the holidays or a boring day in the holidays, and there's pictures of a few other girls in your class or hanging out somewhere having fun, and obviously it looking like so amazing, and just in general the sort of comparing and despairing. I just can't imagine what it would have done to me. It would have completely hollowed me out, and yet we're all sort of fine with this happening just because we're a bit like, the genie's out of the bottle now. I mean, what was the worst aspect of it for you as a teenager? Was it the damage to your self-esteem? Was it feeling left out? Was it the sort of material you were looking at? What was the worst aspect?
I think it was a wee bit of all of it, to be honest. I think mostly, looking back, it's the amount of time that it consumed and how much time not only thinking about what you were going to post, but even when you were out and doing things, you were thinking about taking pictures to post them. You really didn't have a chance to kind of live in the moment. It was always about what's this going to look like on my Instagram feed, really. And And I think that's pretty sad, looking back at it. My brother is younger than me. He is not bothered about social media at all. And I can see that he kind of lives a lot more in the moment than average at his age. So I think probably that's the worst aspect looking back.
But Joshua, there's a happy ending, I believe. It says here on my screen that you have actually come off it in the last couple of weeks. Is that a New Year's resolution? How does it feel?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it feels a lot better. I've come off of Twitter already completely. I mean, mostly because of this whole Grok thing, to be honest. I was on the edge of leaving when Elon Musk bought over, and then I seen kind of all these pictures being generated of these women and children, and I just felt like that was not a place for me to be. In terms of the other social medias, I've not come off completely, but I'm definitely actively kind of staying off them a lot more. I imagine I'll come off them completely pretty soon. It's pretty boring actually when you get into the real world a bit more. But yeah, no, I definitely feel that I've got a lot more time to do things that I enjoy.
Good for you, Joshua. Well done. And you've got a good head on your shoulders. Only 23 and recognising. I think he said something just sort of quite casually there, but I think it's really important. He recognised it as being boring. I mean, I find it like everyone else. I find I'm not on social media platforms, actually. I just think that would just drain my time. But I do look on the internet every now and again, and it's hugely addictive. And sometimes I have to say to myself, look, this is just a bit boring, isn't it? This is a bit boring. Pull your head out of this. Zara's in Norfolk. What do you think about all this, Zara?
Pull the plug on the internet. No, seriously. I grew up without the internet, and I knew what life was, and I met my friends, and I didn't have all this competing with my friends, or wanting to look like I'm not.
Yeah.
My children have grown up with the internet. Okay, it just makes life a bit easier for them, doesn't it? But it's not safe.
It makes life easier in some ways, but then also in the same way that, you know, people used to be able to do their business even through letters and things like that, and now emails were meant to radically cut down the amount of time we spend communicating with people, but in fact, you know, studies have shown actually we now spend more time on correspondence because it's so easy to sort of ping emails here and there and look at them up all the time. But Zara, I love it. I'm going to have to end it there because we're running out of time, but I just pull the plug. I absolutely I agree with you wholeheartedly. And just finally from Fern, she says, a voice of reason, she says, I hear you, but this needs to be from the developers' companies down. Government is so far behind the curve. Security imposed by the government is woefully inadequate and can be circumnavigated easily. Ask any developer worth their weight. Thank you, Fern. Thank you all so much for your calls and messages this evening. Really enjoyed the show. If you missed any of it, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app, where you can stay up to date on the top stories and opinion, put your news categories in the order you want, pause and rewind live radio, and listen to a range of podcasts. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 10 on LBC, it's the great Nick Abbott, but right now it's the Consumer Hour with the fantastic Dean Dunham.
Oh, that sounded good, Claire. Experts are warning of a rise in scam calls using spoof numbers and AI-driven voice cloning, as this latest round of scams are catching out thousands of consumers every day. Whilst these calls sound completely genuine, there is a technique you can use to ascertain if you're talking to a robot deployed by fraudsters or a real person from a genuine organisation. I'll tell you all you need to know in the next hour. I'll also be answering your legal questions, so if you have a legal issue and you need some help, give me a call now on 0345 6060 973 or text 84850. I'm Dean Dunham, and all of that is coming up next on the LBC Consumer Hour.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock. Iran has declared 3 days of national mourning for what it's calling the martyrs who've been killed during the country's wave of political unrest. It says it wants to honour the victims of the battle for national resistance. One agency is claiming at least 500 people in total have been killed as a result of the demonstrations. The international security expert, Dr. Roxanne Farman-Farmayan, has been telling LBC the uprising may yet fail.
Several of the key factors are still missing for this to turn into a major revolution that could topple a very institutionalized government. Among those is the fact that the
ambassador there has been summoned by Tehran over a protest in London. A demonstrator scaled a balcony at the Iranian embassy and removed its flag on Saturday. A British skier has been killed by an avalanche in the French Alps. He's believed to be in his 50s and was skiing on the piste at Le Plan in the southeast of the country. 3 teenagers and a man in his 50s have died after a road collision in Greater Manchester. It happened in Bolton early this morning when a taxi and a car collided head-on. A.O. Patel is a councillor in the area.
As a community, I think people need to take responsibility for the way that they behave on our highways. As an authority, we need to take more appropriate action to enable people to drive safely on the networks. And as a community, we need to come together to support the people that have been affected by this.
The UK government says it's going to develop a new deep strike ballistic missile for Ukraine. A competition is now underway to develop a weapon rapidly which can deliver a 200-kilogram warhead. 5 teenagers have been arrested on the suspicion of murder after the death of a 49-year-old man in County Durham. Police were sent to an address in Stockton on Saturday night. And around 60 firefighters are tackling a fire at a recycling centre in southwest London this evening. The Great Western Main Line, which is near the facility in Southall, has been closed. LBC weather becoming increasingly dry for much of the UK overnight. More rain will move into northwestern areas eventually. Windy with severe gales for western Scotland and a low of around 7 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Tim Daly.
The advice offered in this hour is for guidance only. You should always seek your own independent legal and financial opinion. This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Consumer Hour with Dean Dunham.
Good evening, everyone. 9:03 p.m. Sunday, the 11th of January. Unfortunately, I still got the flu, or as Bob in Malta told me last week, I've got a cold apparently. Now, last year, as you know, scams featured heavily on this show because, of course, there are new scams every day, and because of this, they're going to feature heavily on the show this year. In fact, they're going to feature heavily on this show for the next 5 or 10 years or forever, because scams, unfortunately, are here to stay. The only thing we can do is try and keep ahead of the curve by finding out what the latest scams are. That's why I'm always telling you on this show what they are, making sure we spread the word and making sure that we deploy any tactics that we can find in order to spot and avoid a scam. And on that vein, I have such a tactic to tell you about this evening, because one of the other things I've been talking about on this show quite a bit the last year or two is AI, artificial intelligence, and how fraudsters have been using this to make up their elaborate scams to con you and me out of our hard-earned cash. And what I want to concentrate on a bit later in the show is how they're using AI for what we call voice spoofing. This is where they clone someone's voice. It might be one of your family members, it might be your son, your daughter, your mum, your brother, whoever it is. And when you receive the call, on the face of it, you think, oh, here I am talking to my relative, or it may be they spoof a voice which is supposed to be your bank, HMRC. You get the gist where I'm going with this. And the problem is, people say to me who have fallen victim to these scams, they say there was no way that I could have recognised that this was anything but a genuine call. Well, the good news this evening is there is a way. This is something I've been looking into quite a bit because I wanted to try and find some kind of tactic you could deploy, because so many people are contacting me who have fallen victim to this AI voice spoofing scam. So a bit later in the show, I'm going to give you some techniques you can use to try and ascertain if you are talking to an AI-driven robot or if it's a genuine person from a genuine organisation. Before we get there, I'm answering all of your legal questions. So if you have a legal issue and you need some help, give me a call now on 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp your question to exactly the same number. You can text 84850, or you can go on to X and send your question via a post to @LBC or to me direct @Dean Dunham. Let's get straight to your calls. Ian in Swanage, good evening.
Good evening, Dean. It's a question about a friend of mine. She had solar panels fitted now about 3 years ago, but after about 2 years, 6 or 8 months, she noticed water coming tile and allowed water to stream through into the ceiling. The company's saying that she's out of time for getting anything done under insurance, and I'm saying I believe it's a latent defect, where she has 15 years to bring it forward, as long as she notifies them within 3 years.
Well, you could say that. Those claims are notoriously difficult, but there's another way you can go with it, which is to deploy the Consumer Rights Act. Now, when you say they're out of time, she's out of time because of insurance, it's probably because there's some kind of warranty. They probably mean the warranty period has now expired. But of course, the Consumer Rights Act will not expire for at least 6 years. And the question's going to be, has this arisen because they failed to install the solar panels with reasonable care and skill? I.e., would another solar panel installer who was acting reasonably and with good workmanship, would they have done it differently, or would they have done this exactly the same? So with that in mind, Ian, what your friend needs to do is to get someone else in to have a look at this, to give an opinion as to whether are we talking here fair wear and tear, something which is just one of those things, or are we talking a situation where the installer has done a real shoddy job and that shoddy job has caused the issue? And if that's the case, then the onus will be on them to put this right and to make sure that your friend is not out of pocket. So Ian, the takeaway from this is your friend needs to get someone in now to have a look at this, put something in writing. Hopefully they come back and say, yep, this is bad workmanship. Then she's got some rights under the Consumer Rights Act to go and basically say, yes, you've got to do something about this. You mentioned about the whole latent defect. That's something you'd have to go to the court with. It would be the county court, and she'd need a solicitor for that because it's not straightforward. The Consumer Rights Act is designed to be more consumer friendly. The word consumers in the title. So that's why I would advocate going down that road first to see if she can get some joy there. As I say, if this is a situation where someone else, another expert, says yes, it's bad workmanship, then all the rights are going to be in her court. Ian, last question on this. Do you know how she paid for these solar panels?
I'm guessing through the bank.
Okay. If by chance she paid all or any on a credit card, that could be a route for her to go down to make a Section 75 claim, to basically claim back enough of the money to put this right. You can't claim compensation through Section 75, but you can claim a refund because the workmanship was not good. But as I say, the first step is to find out if another expert is willing to put pen to paper to say, yes, this is not good workmanship, therefore your friend can throw the Consumer Rights Act at them. Good luck with your friend with that. Let me know if there's any more issues, or if, or also let me know if it solves the problem. I'd be interested to know. Dylan in Hounslow, good evening.
Hi, Dean. Good evening to you. Just a question. We moved into my private property where we are last February, and the gas bill, when we took out the account, they never sent us any bills for 11 months now, and after a year they sent us the bill. And they kept it with me to me, which we asked them many times. Now they sent us a bill for £12,000.
I assume you're not running a hotel. It's a house,
no,
is it?
It's a 3-bedroom house.
So did you give them a reading when you first moved into the property?
I'm not sure.
Okay. What I would do, Dylan, go back to them and say, can you give me the precise particulars as to how this £12,000 is made up? What was the starting point of the meter reading, and what is the end meter reading, and therefore how much gas do you say I have used, and over what period? I'm telling you to say all these things because I think you're going to find that they're going to come back and say they're trying to charge you for a period before you occupied the property, because it's quite common. I think that's probably what's going to be the case. In which case, all you'll need to do is go back and prove when you moved in, and if you've got them, give the details of the previous person that either rented or owned the property, depending on which one it was. If that doesn't work and they keep on insisting on charging you, you'll need to go back and say, I dispute this, I did not use that energy, that gas. I'm going to go to the Energy Ombudsman and make a complaint. Do not take any steps until I've finished that process. But in all honesty, I think you'll find if you go back in the terms I've said, I think you'll find this will eventually get resolved. Because as I say, unfortunately it's not an unusual thing. This is amazing. For years on this show, I've been saying these energy providers, whether it's a gas supplier, electricity, whoever it is, their admin is so bad. You wouldn't have thought it would be They make millions of pounds. They've got lots of staff, but year on year, I hear these stories.
Here's something. First they said it was £2,000. Then the next day, they said no, it's £4,000. 2 days later, they said no, it's £12,000. And then 3 days later, they said no, it's £12,000.
Well, it sounds like they're making up as they go along. Almost like they're pulling one of those arms in the casino and the things are going round and seeing what it lands on. I mean, that's what it is. Look, I wouldn't be surprised if every time they've cited a figure to you, they've taken that from a different property, because that happens as well. You wouldn't have thought it does, but it does. It really happens. I hear all these stories, and that's one I've certainly heard before. Dylan, go back and say, look, not having it. I've lived here for this period of time. Also, lastly, one of the things you may want to say to them, can you tell me what is the average bill for a 2-bedroom house in my area? That would be an interesting figure for them to give you. It will not be anywhere near £12,000. And when they come back and they give you the figure, you will go back and say, well, if that's the average, how on earth can I be at £12,000? How could that be possible unless there was a gas leak? And if there was a gas leak and it racked up £12,000, I'd probably suggest your house would probably have blown up by now. So probably that's not the case. But just for safety, by the way, do raise the point just in case, because of course that could be an issue, or it could be you're paying other people's bills, it could be it's a longer period than it should be, or it could be a faulty meter reading. It could be any of these things. But here's what it almost certainly is not. It's not a genuine and accurate reading where you generally owe £12,000 for 12 months of supply. It can't be that. Yeah. So Dylan, thanks for calling. You're going to be in the right here, but go back and push them hard, and don't be afraid to go after the ombudsman if they do not play ball. And don't be afraid to tell them that's where you're going next if they don't resolve the issue. Joanna in North London, good evening.
Good evening, sir. I bought clothes in Haru at the new shop, and I bought them in November on the 18th, and I paid for everything. And I kept on going for them because they had to alter them. So when I went the first time, the lady was not well and she left, and her machine was broken. So I kept going, and until December the 18th. And when I started complaining, then the following day the manager was there, and so she said to me she will send the things somewhere else to be done. She shouted at me because the lady was supposed to alter them. She was there, but then she walked out without the manager seeing her. But then she turned on me. She shouted at me, and I came home since they said they will send them in the Bupa car. They informed me about 9 o'clock on the 23rd of December that they were bringing them, they were sending them. And when they got here, I fitted them on. They were all ruined. The other dress at the back had a water stain and a black ink paint, and the cotton coming out of the back, and the fringes were cut very wrongly. And one dress had a tag on the neck, which when you go through the door, it will blip. And the 3 dresses, they were all ruined.
So what did you do next? You went back to them and said, these are ruined, and if that's what you did, what did they say?
I called, and because the manager went for me, I didn't want to go in there again. I called, and when I called, the person who took the phone, I explained to them, and then he said that I must send the pictures, and with the same number that I called, I must put them on WhatsApp and send the pictures, and I did, and he said he will tell his boss, but I've never heard from them until today.
And when you heard from today, what are they saying? No, we're not helping.
I haven't heard. They haven't called me.
Oh, sorry, you said you've not heard from them up till today.
Yes, until today I haven't heard anything since the last time.
How'd you pay for all this?
I paid by card at the shop.
Okay, credit or debit?
Debit card.
Debit card, okay. Here's my suggestion. It sounds like they're not being very helpful. It's from the facts that you've told me this evening, the rights are all on your side. They have an obligation to deliver these garments to you in pristine condition and to have done the altering exactly as they should have done them. Consumer Rights Act, as I've already said this evening once before to a caller, says you have to provide a service including altering clothing with reasonable care and skill. It also says when you buy clothing, that clothing should arrive with you in pristine condition. If they get ruined in transit, that's not your problem, it's their problem. So you mentioned that they have sent this via a taxi sort of service. That's their issue. These garments were at their risk during that period. So if these problems have occurred during that transit, it's their problem. My suggestion is, because you've paid by a debit card, you only have 120 days from the date of purchase to do what we call a chargeback claim. Therefore, I would do this chargeback claim tomorrow. I would go to your bank and say, here's the situation, explain as you've explained it to me on air this evening, and say, these words are important, there's been a breach of contract because, number one, they did not deliver these garments to me in pristine condition, they're ruined. Number two, they did not carry out their service in altering them with reasonable care and skill, therefore it's a breach of the Consumer Rights Act. And the third breach is when I've gone back and told them all about this, they have failed to give me a remedy. There are 3 breaches. You only need 1 breach for a successful chargeback claim, you've got 3. What should happen next is that your bank should put the money back into your account, and it will then go to this company and say, we've given you our money back. What do you have to say about this? The only more money I can give is, once this retailer has gone back to the bank, it is possible that the bank accepts their version of events and takes the money back off of you. At that stage, you'll not be able to claim again. But this is why you need to make sure you tell them clearly there has been a breach of contract and spell it out for them now. And don't leave this, by the way, do it now. You do not want 120 days to expire, and therefore leave you out of it. More calls and texts coming up next here on the LBC Consumer Hour. You're listening to Dean Dunham, the time is 9:18.
Weekdays from 7 a.m. They have fatal incompetence. Straight to the point. What is the problem they've got over there? Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Companies go backwards, growth down, energy prices up. Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
Did you know Vets for Pets are
The nation's most trusted vets.
We think that's because they're
Locally owned.
and locally loved.
Wherever you are.
We've got a vet local to you.
Vets for Pets. We're all for pets. Based on a survey. To verify, search vetsforpets.com/all for pets.
Hiya, Kenny the hamster here, proud pet of Doug and Carol. Hey up, looks like my mum Carol's off out with the girls again. I tell you, since she took that quick NHS Healthy Choices quiz, she's drinking less, but going out more. And to think, she thought being healthy would mean being boring. You might want to give it a go yourself. Go, girlfriend!
Take your first little step to healthy. Search NHS Healthy Choices quiz to get a score and a simple plan to follow.
The Consumer Hour on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
I'm answering your legal questions. If you have a legal issue and you need some help, give me a call now on 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp your question to exactly the same number. You can text 84850. You can jump on Alexa and say, Alexa, send a comment to LBC, of course, followed by your question. Or you can go on to X and send your question via a post to @LBC. Let's get back to your calls. Jeff in Bishop Stortford. Good evening.
Very good evening, Dean. Thanks for helping me. I'm recently retired. I invested a large sum of money in a litigation fund to loan notes, and they've been paying the interest on those loan notes the last 2 years correctly and on time. One of them is due for redemption maturity. I've asked both of them to be returned to me. One is due on the 5th I've had my financial advisor assist me because this wasn't done through them, it was done independently. It's a very large sum of money, and there's two of them. And I've going to send them an email saying that receiving this money in a timely manner is crucial to my financial commitments. I have rents. I have also got to pay £18,000 out for within a few days, and credit card bills. I'm concerned that they may be defaulting on paying me the money. It is a very large sum of money.
How much is a very large sum of money?
Each loan note is €250,000.
Okay, it is a lot of money. So when you say you invested in a litigation fund, do you mean a fund which is funding litigation through the courts? Is that what you mean?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and when you say that you are getting payments back, how are you getting payments back that are not linked to the success of the litigation? Or is that not how it works?
Well, no, it's not how it works. What they do, I lend them the money as a loan note. They then pass that money on to various solicitors who have been vetted by them for the risk they have. What they call an ATE policy. I believe you understand what that is.
Yeah, I do. It's
so that guarantees the money comes back. It's all vetted under the auspices of the SRA. I forgot what the abbreviation means.
Solicitors Regulation Authority.
They've been paying my interest on time correctly, for each amount, no problems at all. And I'm just very concerned about the fact that money's not yet returned to my bank account. I've checked them up on the internet, I've looked at their accounts, they have significant amounts of money in the bank account, more than enough to satisfy everything. They have substantial sums of money on loan notes elsewhere, and they have a note is on the accounts thing that all loan notes at maturity are paid on time and in full.
So this company that you're making reference to, are they a firm of solicitors regulated by the SRA, the Solicitor Regulation Authority, or are they some form of broker?
They are, it's an organisation, one of the senior directors is a legal person, the other one is a senior financial person. So they have a legal knowledge, legal background. They saw a hole in the market for providing finance to do litigation.
Okay, but the question is, are they a firm of solicitors?
No, they're not.
Are they regulated by anybody?
Not regulated actually by the Financial Services Authority, no.
Okay, I'm asking that because that would be your route of redress if they were to potentially go make a complaint. And if they're not, then of course that means this is not as secure as it would have been. Look, I mean, I've not seen the loan notes, obviously, but it sounds to me there's a breach of contract because it's a breach of the loan note. You need to go back to them, obviously, and point out that you may have done this already, but to say there is a breach of the loan note. Now, of course, if at the moment, did you say at the moment they're only due to pay you some kind of interest rather than the whole sum?
You know, I've asked redemption at maturity of the first one on the 5th of January, and the second one is on the 26th of February. And they said, well, it's on the 4th of January, they said, the CEO has said payments will be made on those dates. If it falls on a bank holiday or a weekend, it'll be made the following working day. It should take 3 days to get to my bank account. That was on Monday, nothing in my bank account Friday evening, pending arrival Monday.
I mean, the only thing you can do in these circumstances is to say, I'm going to issue proceedings for the full amount and I'm going to claim, you know, compensation costs and everything else. And because it's a large amount of money, my advice would be to get a local solicitor to assist you with that. You may, you know, the power of a solicitor's letter should not be underestimated here because they will see that you mean business. I think, Jeff, that's the best advice I can give you. You know, this is not a consumer matter. There's no consumer law we can waive it here. But it's a contractual matter, it's a breach of contract law, and it gives you the equal amount of rights. But unfortunately, if they don't play ball, you've just got to go through the court system. Now, let me just say this as well. Another reason why I'm saying it's really important that you get legal representation with this is because if they do not come back and say, okay, sorry, we'll pay it now. If they say, okay, we'll defend it, we'll fight, you're going to want to protect those funds. And there are things you can do, like getting injunctions, you know, freezing orders and all sorts of things to protect the money in that account. But that, unless you're legally qualified or experienced yourself, that's something that may be difficult for you to navigate on your own. And it's why you need a specialist solicitor to do that for you. I can't stress that advice enough. My advice, my strong advice to you is tomorrow, find someone to help you, get them engaged, it'll be money well spent, because you're trying to protect a huge amount of money here. And hopefully if you take all those steps, Jeff, you'll be okay. Hopefully, you know, the money's going to come to you. make sure you take those precautionary steps. Emmanuel in Chatham, Kent, good evening.
Hi, Sam.
Dean, evening.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Sorry?
Before December 20 last year, I contacted the finance company for a car I wanted to purchase. So the finance company then started up. They contacted the dealership and they found the car for me, and everything was done. So the finance money was approved and sent to the dealership. So, but later I then found out that the car wasn't the specification I wanted to buy. I didn't even go. I didn't take ownership of the car because I wanted a plug-in electric car. But initially the dealership said to me that I was a plug-in electric. But on my way to go pick up the car, he said to me that I was a hybrid petrol. That I didn't want the hybrid petrol. So then I then called the broker. I don't want to mention their name. So I called the broker and I informed the broker. The broker said no problem. That what they're going to do, they're going to start the ongoing process. That was on the 4th of December. Then on the 8th of December, I got the message from the broker that they sent a message to the dealership for them to commence the online process. Then on the 12th, after I heard from them anymore, on the 12th on the 5th of January, that was Monday, I got an email from the finance company saying that they didn't debit my account for tomorrow the 12th of January, that agreement is still subsisting. And I was like, the finance company, sorry, the broker has not communicated to them that I already put out the agreement. So then I chased the office with the dealership. And the dealership said that, they still have the account and they're waiting for the broker to contact them to get the money back. So I contacted the broker. The broker said they informed me about the money for the 5th of December last year. But see, I'm going to get the money back, but they couldn't get from time to go to get the money back from the store. Finally, like that, after I said the broker from the finance company and about two, I don't know the reason why the dealership kept the money in their account. All this while nobody informed me. I wasn't informed of anything. I thought everything had been done and done with.
Emmanuel, can I just ask, I mean, this car we're talking about, did you ever take delivery of the car?
I didn't take delivery of the car at all.
So you've never had the car and you didn't take delivery because you found out it wasn't what you wanted, but the finance agreement did start, didn't it?
Yeah, because they already transferred the money to the dealership. Sorry, to the broker. And the broker transferred the money to the dealership. So okay. I was just going to pick up the car down here.
I understand. Emmanuel, here's what you need to do. Go back to the finance company and say, until I had confirmed that I was ready to take ownership of the car, you should not have transferred money to the garage. That was an error. You should not have done that. I didn't confirm that all was okay. In fact, all was not okay. This car was not, as you know, what it should have been. Therefore, they've taken the car back. It's now your problem that you transferred the money to them. I should be held harmless, not my issue, and see what they say, because the fact of the matter is you told them the car wasn't as it should have been. You never picked the car up. They should not have paid the garage. And really, I don't think they'll argue with you over this. I think what we will find is they will now be arguing with the garage to get the funds refunded to them. So I don't think you're going to have an issue with this. You shouldn't have an issue with it. I've mentioned this evening already, the financial ombudsman. That's where you'll go if you do have an issue with it. And you'll be saying, I'm stuck in a finance agreement that I did not ask to start because the car was wrong. They should not have paid for it. They are in error. It's their problem, not mine. I think you'll find if the facts are as you're explaining to me this evening, they will be on your side, they being the ombudsman. But Emmanuel, I don't think you'll need to go there. I think this will be fine, because I think what's happened here is two things. One, finance company has made their in paying this too early, and two, the garage should have sent it back. They haven't. They're probably being chased. So by all means, go to the finance company and say, can you just confirm the agreement with you and I is now ripped up? And if you won't confirm that, then I'll tell you now, I'll be going off to the ombudsman. I think you'll find they'll come back and say, don't worry, Emmanuel, it's all in hand, we will deal with it. More of your calls and texts coming up next here on the LBC Consumer Hour. You're listening to Dean Dunham, the time is 9:31, and here's your news headlines with Tim Daly.
Iran has declared 3 days of national mourning for what it's calling the martyrs who've been killed during the country's wave of political unrest. It says it wants to honour the victims of a battle for national resistance. 3 teenagers and a man in says it's going to develop a new deep strike ballistic missile for Ukraine. It says it needs to be able to deliver a 200-kilogram warhead. LBC weather becoming increasingly dry for much of the UK overnight. More rain, though, will move into northwestern areas later. Windy with severe gales in western Scotland and a low of around 7 degrees.
This is LBC.
The biggest furniture village sale of the year is on now, and it's everything you've been waiting for. Early bird offers in the Furniture Village sale ends Sunday.
This is Sarah's last game before she does her self-assessment. Like her last game, and the last game before that. Classic. Come on, Sarah, the deadline is 31st of January. Less distraction, more action.
Don't be like Sarah. Visit gov.uk/self-assessment today. Payment support may be available.
New year, new you. Maybe. New year, new car. Definitely. Upgrade your year with the new Vauxhall Frontera Electric or any car from our award-winning range. With 0% APR over 4 years with a minimum 20% deposit and £1,000 off on top of all other offers. That's a resolution worth sticking to. Search Vauxhall today. £1,000 saving on new car orders until January 2026. Personal contract purchase, 20% deposit, 18 plus. Subject to status and availability. T's and C's, Stellantis Financial Services.
Go on, leave the never-ending laundry pile, quiet flat, and empty fridge at home. Hop on the train and go into the workplace zone with Southeastern. Whether you're heading in for a change of scene, to share ideas, or enjoy a lunchtime chat with your colleagues, with our great range of tickets, we've got the one to suit your commute. Buy yours now on our app or website and pay no booking fees. So, go on, go in.
The Consumer Hour with Dean Dunham on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Let's pause for a minute now and have a quick chat about scams. That subject that's, as I said at the top of the show, I'm going to be talking about for the next 10 years probably. And in particular, AI, artificial intelligence, because now AI has got something called voice spoofing. It can basically clone anyone's voice. It can change that voice to say anything, and it can create a phone call. So it can get the voice of your son or daughter, it can dial your phone number, and it can sound like your son or daughter is basically asking something of you. Probably, I've got no money, mum or dad, can you send me some money? Or more commonly, especially in January, is it will clone the voice of someone from the likes of HMRC and will say something like, you've got a fine, you've got to pay it today. The idea behind this is what it's designed to do is to be real enough to trigger panic or trust. So you hear the start of the conversation, you think, okay, there's a problem here. My son or daughter needs some money, or HMRC is saying I've got to pay a fine. I trust it because it sounds like my son or daughter, or it sounds like a genuine call from the likes of HMRC. Therefore, I'll do something about it. And what it's designed to do is to make you not think next, because you've already decided this must be a genuine call, and there's a call to action, and it's an immediate call to action, i.e. usually that means I've got to give up some information, or I've got to send some money somewhere immediately. Therefore, you don't do anything else. Now, what I'm telling you this evening is, when you receive these calls, do not immediately believe that that's a genuine call from a family member or from HMRC or your bank or whoever it is. Let the conversation carry on for a minute. And the reason I say that is, whilst this, I've been listening to lots of these, by the way, and analysing them, and whilst they do sound really good, they do sound like the person. And I've had someone create an AI voice spoof of myself, and I've listened to it thinking, does that sound like me? And it's me, it totally sounds like me. But when I let it rumble on, it starts to not sound like me. The voice and the tone does, when I've not got a cold or the flu as I call it. It does sound like me, but it's things like there's no emotion. It's all too smooth, it's all too flat. But the real thing, if you really want to find out, is they've scripted it to say certain things. They've trained it to give the obvious responses to obvious questions that you would ask. But there's no way they've been able to train it to answer a question which is completely off base and off topic. So if you get a call and it says, do you think it's from your son saying, I've run out of money, can you give me some money? If you stop and say, Well, by the way, your nan's making cheese on toast today. Would you like to have some of that? It won't be able to answer the question. Or if it's from HMRC saying you have failed to file your tax return, you've got to give us £50 today. Please, give me your bank details now. If you say, before I do that, I've heard that it's going to rain tomorrow. Is it going to rain tomorrow? Now, if it's a genuine person, they're going to say, I'm really sorry. This is not about raining tomorrow. I don't know. And, you'll know the type of response you'll get. But if it's a robot, if it's AI generated, it will not know what to do. There'll be a long pause. I've tested it. There'll be a long pause while it tries to process this to find what kind of answer can I give, and it won't be able to give one. 9 times out of 10, it won't be able to give one. Also, if you interrupt mid-sentence, it can't handle it, whereas a human can. So if you're talking to me on air this evening, and I start giving you some advice and you interrupt me, I'll know to pause and let you have your say, because that's the nice, kind person that I am. But if I was an AI robot, I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd carry on talking over you because I'm not trained to allow for interruptions. You see where I'm saying to just test these things, interrupting, saying things that are not in context of the discussion. All of these things will help. And the other big thing that AI can't do, it can give you no emotion. It can't do that. So perhaps start telling it a sob story, a very sad story, and see what kind of response you get. If you tell me a sad story tonight, I'm going to be very sorry for you. I'm going to say sorry and everything else. If I'm an AI robot, I will not know how to do that. I won't be doing it. This is the sort of thing you need to do now, because thousands, and I mean thousands of people every single day are now being caught out by this really sophisticated AI spoofing scams. And the only way you can now stop it is by being one step ahead. All of those things I've just told you, puts you one step ahead of the current technology that is being deployed by the fraudsters. Let's go back to your calls. David in Romford. Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, in 2006, I opened a lifetime free business account, which also promised interest on credit balances. They've now decided they're going to charge, they want to charge me £9.99 a month, plus other charges. Now, I've complained to them and to the Ombudsman. Now, the initial response, I've just got a reply just before Christmas, and the initial investigator says he thinks, although they advertised that at the time, he says that it's just a marketing campaign, and he doesn't think it was in the terms and conditions, even though I sent them a letter signed by the operations manager in 2006, promising all this information. I just think it's outrageous that a bank, who you think you should be able to rely on what they say, can market things and they're not be true.
David, I think I know the bank you're talking about, and if it is one I'm thinking of, I think it is. I have looked into this, and if it is that one, the Ombudsman's response is wrong. But it doesn't mean you're going to get anywhere with it. It's wrong because my understanding is what they've actually done. You're right. They advertised this particular account as being free business banking for life. There is some law around what for life means in the context of it. It doesn't matter. But that is what they did. But my understanding is that what this particular bank has done is they've said we're no longer continuing with that type of account. We're now going to give you a new type of business account. It's called something else. And by the way, that one doesn't come with free banking for life. Is that what's happened with you?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Now, here's how they've got around that cleverly with their lawyers' help. And that is because if they had kept the original bank account, there is no doubt about it, because I've read them in detail, the terms and conditions were binding. They did say free banking for life. They would have to have honoured that, at least for quite a long time. There's a query as to what life means under contract law, but that doesn't matter for this discussion. And therefore they could not have done what they've done. The only way around it is the terms and conditions did not say that they were not allowed to close that business type account down at any time. They're allowed to do that. So if they close it down, those terms and conditions fall by the wayside. Then they move you to a new type of account with new terms and conditions, which can say whatever the bank likes them to say. At this point, you've got the opportunity to say, I don't like that, I'm moving banks. Therefore, it doesn't sound very good. It's not very good customer service, but legally, they've navigated around the problem, and it is okay. And they're not going to fall short of the law, even though it's, in my view, a really bad practice. They're okay. many people are really angry about this, like you are as well, but fortunately they're allowed to do it. Perhaps what you do in protest is say, well, actually, that's not the bank I want to be with, I'm going elsewhere. But I can assure you that other banks, if they were to use this whole hook of free banking for life at one stage or another, they would probably do the same thing. No one wants to do this forever because they make a lot of money out of these account fees. That's just the reality of the situation. Sorry, David, I'm not better news. But as I say, I've seen this one quite a bit, and that is the situation. Mark in Skipton, good evening.
Hello, good evening, team. We booked a holiday lodge in 2022, and that holiday lodge, we came up to sell it recently, and in seeking to sell the property, the purchaser sold to insurer, and unfortunately the insurer declined to cover it for flood risk. When we purchased it, we sold assurances in terms of park provision for insurance and flood mitigation. It turns out, having done some investigation, that the park may have missold us on the basis of the planning permission that was there, in the sense that the size of the lodge being the coverage for flood risk and flotation devices that must be on it. So I guess my question is, what is the position and what would you guide in terms of potential mis-selling if someone sold something in terms of a holiday lodge on a holiday park but didn't have the prerequisite planning permission that underpinned it?
Unfortunately, this is another scenario which has proven to be very, very common, especially with holiday lodges and static caravans. It's one of those and so forth, where they don't have the correct planning permission, or they tell you that you can reside there full time when actually you can't. All these things I've heard before, they're all very common. Let me start by asking this question, Mark. When you purchased this holiday lodge, as you're describing it, did you use legal representation?
I didn't. We basically signed a license agreement, but I saw reassurances as to the flood protections that were in place and associated mitigation.
Okay, and all these assurances that you saw, did you get all the responses in writing? Do you have proof to prove what you're telling me this evening?
Yes, I got assurances that it was the park's responsibility to ensure they were protected from flood as much as possible.
Okay. Now, often on this show, I'm trying to navigate people to be able to deal with their own problems, to save them money, and 9 times out of 10, because I'm talking about the Consumer Rights Act often, that's entirely possible. But sometimes, as we've had once already this evening, and now I'm going to have again with your call, sometimes I have to say the best thing you could do is go and get a lawyer to have a look at this paperwork and to fire a letter off for you, because, you know, it does sound like misrepresentation. There isn't any such what we call cause of action in English law called misrepresentation. It's going to be called something else, but it will amount to the same thing. And if they have sold you something on the premise of promises that are not true, then it will give rise to a legal action. And the legal action will be you to claim compensation for how you're now going to be out of pocket, which will be this lodge may be unsellable, or it may be worth far less money because of the issues that you have now discovered. Either way, they're going to be fairly complex legal arguments where my view is a solicitor and or barrister need to draft the letter and the court proceedings if you have to go there for this. Mark, how much did this lodge cost?
Well over 100,000.
Okay, so we're talking a lot of money here. There's a lot of money for you to lose. You don't want to lose it. You need representation. Ordinarily, when you take someone to court, the loser pays the cost of the winner. From the limited information you've told me this evening, if you can substantiate, which means if you can show evidence to prove everything you've told me, this is a case you ought to be able to win. Although again, I advocate that you ought to get someone to look at it, because the disadvantage I've got, I can't see anything. I've not got anything in front of me. I may have a different view if I did have something in front of me, all your paperwork. But from what you've told me, it sounds like I wouldn't. Therefore, I would get someone to have a look at this. It would be money well spent, as I told a caller earlier this evening. And I think you'll find that the mere threat of legal proceedings, if it's framed in the right way and it's framed in a powerful way, should be enough for this company to come back and say, what do we need to do to solve this issue for you, Mark, so you don't feel aggrieved and you're not out of pocket. Hopefully that's what will come next. But ultimately, if it's not what comes next, you would have to go off to the full county court, issue a full claim and fight this out in court. Believe me, the county courts up and down the country will have seen many of these claims. They are very popular. You only have to go on the internet and put it into a search engine. You may already have seen on in the likes of YouTube that I've done many videos on this with many people who are in the same situation as you. If you go and find those on the @ConsumerLawyer YouTube channel, you will find I've done live streams on this. I've answered loads of questions about it. You'll find lots of useful information on that. But my view is the law's going to sit on your side. They will, if they're like any other park I've seen, they'll dig their heels in. But you're going to have to really go and push. And again, it's why having assistance from someone legally qualified is going to be very valuable for you in this situation. More of your calls and texts coming up next here on the LBC Consumer Hour. The time is 9:47.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Nick Abbott.
The US and Israel consider striking Iran after deadly protests. Should they get involved? And teachers call for a social media ban. Is that a good idea?
Nick Abbott at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
Something unexpected has arrived in Happy Meal. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Hello Kitty and friends are teaming up for the ultimate collab. Joining your little ones on a fun-fueled adventure. Some fun, some food, it's all inside this Happy Meal. Until the 2nd of February from 11 a.m. includes one pre-selected book or toy while stocks last.
During the Air France Rendezvous, take advantage of great offers. Until the 27th of January, book your flight to Dubai from £399 or Hong Kong from £589. From London Heathrow via Paris, return including tax. And from the 29th of March, you can reach Paris and beyond with our new flights from London Gatwick. Elegance is a journey. Air France. To book and for terms and conditions, visit airfrance.co.uk.
Brands that use radio are 49% more likely to get noticed. Amplify your advertising at radiocentre.org, assuming you want to get noticed.
People ask me, what's my good place? Sunday lunch with the whole family. And knowing that because I'm over 55, I can withdraw from my pension pot with a few clicks on the Pension Bee website. Ollie, are you feeding the dog?
No.
At Pension Bee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident. When investing, your capital is at risk. Withdrawals available from the age of 55, 57 from 2028.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, the Consumer Hour, with Dean Dunham.
I've got 10 minutes to keep hold of my voice, and you've got 10 minutes to get your questions in. So if you need legal advice, need some help, give me a call now, 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850. Let's go straight back to your calls. Hannah in Bristol, good evening.
Oh, hi there. Thanks for listening. I just had a question because I bought a new build back in Feb 2025 and spontaneously the skylight just completely shattered back in August. I've actually got a video of it on my phone and I'm just wondering who's responsible to pay for it. So I've gone through the glass company and they said that it's out of the 12-month warranty, so they won't cover it. Through my new build insurance, they said that they don't cover it because it's structural elements only, so windows aren't covered. And then through my home insurance, they won't cover it either because they say that it was an act of God, not specific accidental damage. So yeah, I'm a bit stuck on what to do really.
So when they say it was an act of God, do we know what caused this skylight to smash, or however you just described it to me? How did
it just completely shattered. Like I was in the kitchen at the time, just completely went, and there was no sort of hit to it or anything. So I don't know. People have got different theories whether there's a bit of nickel sulfide in it, whether the heat or something. But no one knows what happened. Everyone's saying that it's such a rare thing to happen.
Well, it's not. The first of all, it's not an act of God. That's a ridiculous statement for your insurance provider to make. I always say this: if an insurance provider can bring a claim, it will. They do like the words act of God because it gives them an out, not on every occasion, but on some. But my starting point here would probably be to go back to the company that sold you the skylight to say, look, it doesn't, I'm not talking about warranty periods. I'm talking about, was this skylight fit for purpose? Was it of satisfactory quality? Rights Act says that it should have been suitably durable. I did nothing, it's not fair wear and tear, therefore I'm entitled to a remedy, which here would be a replacement. Of course, it's not going to be a repair. It'll be a long time to repair that. It will be a replacement or to give your money back. Replacement is what you want under the Consumer Rights Act. That's what you'll be saying to them. Retailers and traders like to pull out the bag this whole you're outside of a warranty period or guarantee period, but all that means is you can't go direct to either the manufacturer or you can't claim under that particular warranty or guarantee. But it doesn't mean you no longer have rights, and it doesn't mean you no longer have rights against that organisation, that retailer or trader, because the Consumer Rights Act gives you that right to go back and basically say, I want a remedy. So Hannah, what you need to do is go back and do that. Now there is going to be an evidential issue, because after 6 months, and you are after 6 months, technically the burden shifts to you to prove that it was nothing you did and it was a problem with this particular skylight. And of course that's going to be really difficult. Even if you get an expert to come around, I imagine because it's smashed everywhere and you may have thrown the debris away, it's probably going to be difficult to do that. But nevertheless, if they don't play ball, that might be what you need to do, is to get someone to give an opinion. The other thing I would say is it's worth going online, it's worth putting in a search engine the same make and model of skylight, just to see if anyone else is complaining about the same thing, and it's worth asking the trader if they've had any other complaints about the same skylight, and it's worth asking the manufacturer the same question, because usually when something like this happens, there's been a problem in the manufacturing process, which will mean yours will not be the only one with a defect. So this is why you need to do that kind of level of investigation. Finally, hopefully you're going to say credit card. How'd you pay for this?
So it was a developer actually that built the house. So I didn't deal with the glass company directly. And I have spoken to them, and I've actually got a video of it where it shows that I wasn't doing anything. And because it's double glazing, so the outer layer is still intact, but it's the inner layer. So it just shows that it just completely shatters. So I have actually got proof that it was nothing that I did.
Okay. When you say video, do you mean you got a video of when it actually happened?
When it happened, because I heard the shattering, it sounded like really heavy rain, so I sort of obviously moved out of the way and then started videoing it. So it's quite an impressive video.
Wow.
Where it's just a whole pane of glass coming down. Yeah, quite scary. I'm glad I wasn't underneath it.
And it's on the inside, not the outside?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well that strikes out the act of God, by the way, doesn't it? Because the act of God can't have been something that happened inside.
Yeah.
Normally it wouldn't be, so your insurance company's wrong. That's wonderful evidence. Armed with that, I would definitely go back and say this can be nothing more than a manufacturer's defect. If you can get your builder or another builder to say there's no way that could have happened unless there was a defect with the skylight, even better, and then you'll be saying, look, under the Consumer Rights Act, I'm now entitled to a remedy. Now, at the same time, I would go back to the insurance company and say, you said this is an act of God. It cannot be an act of God. That's just not the case, because, and show them the video and say nothing actually caused it. No elements outside. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't a tree falling on. Nothing at all.
I think that's what they're saying. They're saying because there wasn't a specific incident, then they won't cover it because it was just a spontaneous, act of God in their quotations.
Well, I'm not really subscribing to that. I would say to them that if they don't pay out, you'll go off to the financial ombudsman and lodge a complaint. You may as well. It's not going to cost you anything. They may well be on your side, but please do take those other steps I've mentioned, I've advised. Look online, see if anyone else is complaining about the same thing. Ask the question about, have there been any other skylights that have been damaged? Come back with this type of story. Do all of that due diligence, all that investigation work, because ultimately the trader, the retailer that sold this to your builder is going to know that you're not going to go away. Do you know how much this skylight cost, by the way?
I don't know. I think a few £1,000s to repair it, but I'm not sure exactly no.
Okay. Take all those steps. My view is that you are going to get somewhere. You may have to push it really hard, but I'd be surprised that if you take the stance of, I'm not taking no for an answer, my view is you'll get what you want. I think you will. An unusual case, an interesting case, but a case where I think the rights are on your side. I think you're entitled to a replacement for free. Do not put your hand in your pocket, by the way. Make sure you take all those steps. Good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Good luck with that. And you're now on air. What's your question?
Hi. I purchased a pair of earrings from an independent small jeweller in the town where I live on the 16th of December. They were £107, which as a pensioner, that was a lot of money for me to be spending on do warn them they're unhygienic now. But I said, I hear that, but I said I didn't buy a pair of earrings not to wear them, surely.
And they are getting themselves all confused. Now, when you buy something online, I'm not saying you did that, but when you do buy something online, you have the right to return the items if you do not like them. No questions asked, as long as you do it within 14 days. But there's an exception to that rule, and that is if there's a hygiene issue. So if you bought these earrings online, decided you didn't like them, but you tried them on, then they can deploy what they're saying to you now and say sorry, and you can't send them back. But if goods turn out to be faulty, there's no excuses they can engage. They have to basically repair them or give you your money back or give you a replacement. They can't talk about hygiene. It's totally irrelevant. So, and the other good bit of news is, you heard me say to a previous caller that because she was now more than 6 months after purchase, she had to prove the problem was not caused by her. You don't have to do that. You're within 6 months. So you can go back and say, look, these are faulty. I didn't cause the issue. Therefore, I want my money back, or I want you to repair them for free. And unless they can prove otherwise, they've got to give you that remedy under the Consumer Rights Act. How'd you pay for these, Han? It's a lot of money.
Debit card. The one he has, the jeweller, he's kept them. He said, I'm sending them off to get the metal tested. I said, look, to be honest with you, politely, I said to him, I'm not really interested in that. I said, on these earrings, they're obviously not made properly.
Yep, not durable enough, not fit for purpose. And go back to him tomorrow and say, look, I now want my money back. You're inconveniencing me. You shouldn't be doing that under the law of the Consumer Rights Act. If you do not give me my money back this week, I'm going to make a chargeback claim. That's where you go to your bank, you say there's a breach of contract because I bought goods that are not durable, not fit for purpose, breach of contract, therefore give my money back. They will transfer the money back to you. This jeweller will know that's going to happen, and probably therefore, to avoid the chargeback claim, will probably do what you want them to do. Good luck, Anne. I think that's going to be perfectly fine now. I think you'll be okay with that one. Thank you very much for your calls, text and tweets this evening. That's it from me, consumer lawyer Dean Dunham. A quick reminder that the advice offered in this hour is for guidance only. You should always seek your own independent legal opinion. I'll be back next Sunday, 9 p.m. with another LBC Consumer Hour. In the meantime, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and opinion, put your news categories in the order you want, pause and rewind live radio, and listen to a range of podcasts. Download the all-new official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 1 is Richard Spur, but next here on LBC, it's Nick Abbott.
Thank you, Dean. A packed programme tonight. We will be talking about potholes and what the government's new plan might mean to your wheels and your tyres. Teachers are calling for a ban on social media for children to fix what they call is a behaviour crisis in their schools. We'll get the truth about a subject the public feel very strongly about, but on which they appear misinformed, and that's the number of people coming to our country. Prince Harry is coming back to the UK for a short while. He wants to bring his children, but is concerned about the possible lack of security he will be offered. We'll get a weather forecast and check in with our US correspondent for the latest from there. But first, is America, and by extension possibly the UK, really going to start the war with Iran? And more with me, Nick Abbott, after the new news at 10 on LBC.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, reports from the Middle East are claiming President Trump has committed the United States to intervention in Iran. Several sources in Washington have told the Jerusalem Post he's decided to help anti-government demonstrators, but is yet to decide how and when. Tehran has already warned the US it will retaliate if it's attacked. The former intelligence officer, Dr. Lynette Nusbacher, has been telling LBC the Islamic Republic isn't weakening.
The Iranian government has no incentive to leave. They're very confident that if necessary, they will shoot people until the protests stop.
And there'll be more on this with Nick Abbott over the next hour here on LBC. 5 people are are in hospital after a road collision in Greater Manchester which killed 3 teenagers and a man. It happened in Bolton early this morning. Greater Manchester's Chief Constable has passed on her condolences to the families of the victims. Local authorities in the Ukrainian capital Kyiv say more than 1,000 apartment buildings still don't have any heating after a Russian attack. On Friday, a missile strike left nearly all of the city without power or heat. Here, the UK government says it will develop a new deep-strike ballistic missile for Ukraine. A competition is now underway to develop a weapon which can deliver a 200-kilo warhead. The military logistics expert Dr. Major General Tim Cross has been telling LBC the UK also needs to up its game on defence.
If we were going to be involved in a high-intensity war-fighting operation, we could not do that at large scale. We couldn't even do it for very long at relatively small scale, because you consume a huge amount of ammunition and stocks and so on and so forth.
The mayor of Minneapolis has warned a deep mistrust of federal agencies in the city is emerging after last week's killing of a woman by an immigration officer. Jacob Frey is calling for state agencies to be involved in the current investigation, which is being carried out by the FBI at a national level. The US-based journalist Harriet Alexander has been telling LBC the current arrangements are sending out worrying signals for many.
There is a fear that this person will be allowed to walk free, that there won't necessarily be a complete investigation, and that it might give the idea that this kind of action is acceptable in the line of duty.
And in sport, West Bromwich Albion have appointed Eric Ramsey as their new manager. He joins the club on a 2.5-year contract. LBC weather becoming increasingly dry for much of the UK overnight. More rain for northwestern areas later, and severe gales in western Scotland. We'll see a low of around 7 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Tim Daly.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbott.
Good evening. As you just heard, the US and possibly Israel have discussed intervening in Iran as reports emerged of a crackdown on protests in which hundreds of people have been killed, according to a human rights group. Tehran has vowed to retaliate against Israel, as well as US military bases and shipping in the region if it is attacked. The Iranian president has accused the US and Israel of orchestrating the riots, but the regime said that it is still willing to listen to its people. Andrew Fox is a military analyst and Middle East strategy expert, a former paratrooper who served in the Middle East, and he joins us on the line now. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening.
What do we know about this protest? How did it start?
Well, Iran's had some real problems economically. Their inflation has gone off the charts. And of course there are all supply issues. And the regime has been weakened by the 12-day war that was taking against Israel last summer. So there's a number of factors here which have all come together, including religious repression, which have caused serious discontent with the Iranian people. So they're now showing that discontent on the streets.
Yeah, and it started quite a hardline religious supreme leader. The president is sort of second in command, and the supreme leader is Ayatollah Khomeini, and he is apparently the one that ordered the crackdown on the protesters. Is that right?
Khamenei, yes, he is very much the sort of religious figurehead of the movement. He's a very old man now. He's sort of 86 years old. He doesn't seem to be quite as in control as he has been in the past, and there's certainly indications that his subordinates are sort of jockeying for the position beneath him. But there is also, within the regime itself, a high degree of unity. So it's not as if there's anybody in the immediate kind of aftermath of Khamenei, even if he does move on, who's going to be any more reasonable or any more moderate.
And how much? It was a very religious country, of course. I mean, I think the official stats is that it's 95% Muslim, but unofficially, they estimated that something of the order of 40 to 50% aren't really that religious in Iran. So how much support does this religious supreme leader actually enjoy?
Well, that's probably slightly the incorrect question. The better question, I think, is how does he enjoy support amongst those who are able to enforce the laws he decrees, and that is actually a very high level, because they've spent 40 years purging non-loyalists from their ranks. They've spent years making sure that everyone in key positions is a fellow extremist, a fellow loyalist to the Ayatollah. So even if the people of Iran aren't particularly religious and don't particularly adhere to the sort of slightly extreme philosophy, slightly extreme version of Islam that the Ayatollahs follow, that actually doesn't matter, because they have the ability to enforce it on 100% of the population.
And in doing that enforcing, are they essentially keeping order where without them chaos would reign, as is reportedly been the case just lately in Venezuela?
It depends. Iran is a very disparate country. There are 5 major ethnic groups, and one of the problems with previous protests has been the fact that these opposition groups haven't been able to pull together in one direction. There's been no unifying figure to kind of get behind. The difference this time does seem to be that Reza Pahlavi, the son of the old Shah, who was overthrown in 1979, does seem to be providing slightly more of a figurehead this time and more of a unifying figure. So again, these protests do have a slightly different flavour to the previous ones that we've seen in Iran.
America's got a pretty bad recent history in Iran. Trump pulled America out of the nuclear proliferation treaty, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2018, and we in Britain had a hand in destabilising the country when Iran nationalised its oil industry in the 50s. We've constantly interfered, the West, to make things worse, it seems. Should we be interfering now?
Well, the question is interfering to what end? I mean, look, the Americans are discussing airstrikes. Mr. Trump promised that he would intervene if the Iranian regime were using lethal force on the protesters. Mr. Trump does have a relatively good track record of following through on those promises when it comes to Iran, at least. We saw that during the 12-day war last summer. The question is what you're using military force to do, and I think in this case it would be hopefully creating the conditions to deter groups like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Council, the hardline
And the Iranians have said that they will strike back in some way. How might they do that, do you think?
Well, already we know that the Iranian missile supplies that were damaged by the the Iranian regime has put a lot of effort since last summer into making sure that they can have that retaliatory effect. And at every time should the regime appear to be about to fall, they might go for a parting shot and fire everything they've got, not only in Israel but also other countries around the Gulf.
Right, and that is regardless of whether Israel actually gets involved personally, right?
Yes, because the religious philosophy of the Ayatollah is a slightly strange one. They believe that the Mahdi will return when the state of Israel is destroyed, which they call the Lesser Satan, and when the United States is destroyed, which they call the Great Satan. And if you look at the public propaganda that's been pushed out by the regime, it shows, Iranian missiles destroying both of those places. So it's a very, very strange religious philosophy. And should the regime be about to fall, religious fanaticism can be responsible for some very strange decisions.
To my eyes, Donald Trump seems to regard himself as a world emperor, taking whatever he wants, attacking whoever he wants. Wouldn't it be better for us in the UK to stay out of another Middle East conflagration, to sort of distance ourselves as much as possible from this unstable, warlike American leadership?
Yeah, Mr. Trump is certainly flexing American muscles in a way that we haven't really seen, since the 18th century, sorry, 19th century. So it's something that I think the UK is keen to distance itself from. We are also under threat from Washington right now, as not only as Europeans, but also regarding the Greenland issue. The United States has shown very much that they're not our ally. And as you say, this isn't really the UK's business. But that said, on top of that, the Iranian regime is our enemy. We have had assassinations on UK soil carried out by the Iranian regime. They fund Hezbollah, who pump drugs, keep people smuggling weapons into Europe. This is a really malign presence on the world stage, sat in Tehran, and we might consider it in our national interest to help overthrow them. But there's no guarantees that any military action will actually have that effect.
Do you think that America is now a malign influence on the world stage?
I do. I think they're a destabilising influence. I think they're critically damaging to European security. And Mr. Trump's new Monroe Doctrine, or Donroe Doctrine as he's calling it, it's certainly a recipe for severe instability around the world. It pulls America from being kind of a global presence to a regional presence, which creates a space for countries like Russia, countries like China, to flex their muscles and try and establish their dominance. Clearly they're both very malign regimes, and America's giving them a free hand. So I find America a very challenging proposition right now.
Yes, and yet we seem to be in the business of cozying up to America as much as possible, probably because we feel as though we're sort of adrift, a small, relatively insignificant island off the coast of Europe, and somewhat friendless.
Well, unfortunately, our defence is inextricably intertwined with America for now, and it's going to be a very expensive and painful business to unwind that. We're reliant on them for certain elements of our nuclear deterrent. We buy a lot of defence technology from them. Looking at our Royal Air Force fighter jets like the F-35. There's all sorts of ways in which we have spent the last, since 1945, the last number of years, working side by side in lockstep with the Americans. And of course, NATO itself is entirely reliant on American infrastructure to keep it going. So when America's taking this sudden turn towards isolationism and America first, it puts us in a real bind, and it's going to be, in terms of defence, very, very expensive to extract ourselves from that, and that's before we even get to the wider economy.
Yes, the F-35s, I think we're on the hook for many, many, many billions. We've taken delivery of a few, some of which don't work because we can't get the parts. So we're dependent on America for the parts, we're dependent on America for the technology that runs them, we're dependent on America for the weapons that we strap to them, and we have to have their permission to use them. It's a pretty poor state to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately this is down to decades of defence mismanagement. When the Cold War ended in 1989-1990, I think there was a wide assumption that we wouldn't really need, a military
world's largest oil reserves. He's cozied up to Saudi Arabia, probably not going to invade them. He's threatened to invade Canada, which is the third largest reserves of oil in the world. And, of course, Iran is number 4. That's what all this is about, isn't it? If Iran didn't have oil, then we wouldn't be talking about it.
No, I would push back quite hard on that. I think this is very much about the destabilising influence Iran has around the world. I mean, if you look at the war that started in Israel on 7th of October 2023, that is entirely down to Iran's policy. They're trying to raid Israel with proxy forces. When we were fighting in Basra, we were fighting against Iranian-backed militias. Iran has a lot of British blood on its hands. They've been a destabilising force, not only in the Middle East, but globally since 1979. This is a genuinely malign regime, and if they fall, as long as something that comes behind them is better, that can only be a good thing for not only the world, but also the UK, for America, for Israel, for any country you care to name.
Good to talk to you, Andrew. Thanks so much for that. Andrew Fox, military analyst, Middle East strategy expert, former paratrooper who served in the Middle East. So what are your thoughts on the prospect of war? 0345 6060 973.
This is LBC.
On your marks, get set, go hybrid. The new Toyota Aygo Cross Hybrid. More oomph than a Friday feeling, and smoother than your last online date. More confidence, more go. In a new hybrid engine with 0% APR representative over 24 months. The new Toyota Aygo Cross Hybrid. Go on. Visit your local Toyota centre. Price from £21,595. Available on Toyota PCP when financed through Toyota Financial Services by 31st March 2026. Optional final payment indemnities may be required. See website, conditions apply.
The following is from TFL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
So we're talking about Iran, we're talking about the possibility of American intervention, and of course the possibility of us joining in America, because that seems to be our role in the world, isn't it? Kemi Badnock is still very gung-ho. She wants us to start blasting holes in things. I wonder if that's your feeling as well. 0345 6060 973. Birmingham. Hello, Benjamin.
Hi, how are you? I'm trying not to waffle on, but I've got a main point about Iran I wanted to get off my chest.
Go ahead.
Alright, well, so basically, the guest, it was interesting speaking to your first guest you had on. You were saying quite a few interesting points, but it's the Crown Prince who's in America. It's actually called Pahlavi, not Pahlavi. So I just wanted to explain that. That's fair enough. Anyway, so one thing I want to for the viewers to understand who they might not understand about Iran, it's quite complicated. It's not black as white saying that the Iranian government are these religious fanatics, so if you get rid of them with a so-called revolution, then everything's going to be hunky-dory and all the people are going to unite behind the Prince Pahlavi. It's not simple as that. Basically, the problem is with a lot of these Shah supporters who are encouraging these protesters, and a lot of them are shouting his name to come back to Iran from Mecca. The problem is a lot of them, they go against winning the hearts and minds of ordinary Iranians, because a lot of ordinary Iranians are Shia Muslim. They might not be fanatic like many people in the government, but still they're Shia Muslim. And yes, guaranteed, many Iranians, they're very liberal, they might not be religious. However, there are still a decent amount of Shia Muslims in Iran. And the problem is, these protesters, they're now rioting and they're burning down mosques. So how is that going to win over the hearts and minds of ordinary Iranians who might be Shia? And also, another problem is, a lot of these Shah supporters, they will say crazy things like, oh, these Iranian people in the government, they're occupiers, they're Islamic occupiers, they're not Iranian, we're going to bring the true Iran back. But the problem is they don't know their own history. Yes, Iran has a beautiful, amazing historical history from thousands and thousands of Persian Empire, different kings, pre-Islam. However, for hundreds of years, Shia Islam has been embedded into Iranian culture. You can't just suddenly
aren't suggesting that is something that they want. They just want a better life. They want to be able to...
But that's what I'm trying to explain. These rioters, these protesters, which many are now turning into rioters, they're going around burning Islamic symbols, burning, anything to do with Islam, but going around burning mosques. This is going to create... It's more likely to create a civil war rather than win the hearts and minds of the whole of Iran. Right. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, and are you Iranian?
I have Iranian heritage. I know quite a lot about Iran because I studied a lot when I was younger about Iran. I've been to Iran. I do know quite a lot about both dynamics, about the history side, about the religious side, about...
Right. And do you think that most of the people... And do you think that most of the people in Iran enjoy the kind of regime that they're living under, the strictness of the regime? Because that must surely be part of what the protests are about.
The problem is, it's very complicated. It's very easy for people in the Iranian government to say, it's these actions that have caused this mess. However, in a way, they're right. And I'm concerned, what's the point of, if in 1979 they had a revolution to get rid of the Shah, at that time they felt was too Americanized and make it change in one too fast.
With good reason, surely, because it was installed by the Americans.
Exactly. But, so what's the point of having a revolution in 1979, get rid of a puppet Shah, just to have an American and Israeli-backed Shah again? What's the point? So that's why many Iranians, they're going to be confused now. They might not want to support these protesters because they don't want Iran to lose independence. And this might sound really crazy, even though many Iranians, they might not always agree with the Iranian government. Like you said, they might be too strict. However, at the same time, they feel that Iran at least has an independence. And many people probably hope that if Iran could just make a deal in the future with the West, then think we could remove the sanctions. That's been the whole problem.
Well, it seems unlikely, particularly as Donald Trump is occupying the White House from now until an indeterminate time in the future. And he's the chap that put the sanctions back on and pulled out of that nuclear proliferation deal. All right, good to talk to you, Benjamin. Thanks for that. Soraya says Trump has no interest in helping the people of Iran. This is only about his overinflated ego. The irony is that he has his masked thugs on the streets in the US. He is a malign narcissist. Well, yes, it does seem somewhat horribly ironic that people are getting killed in America for protesting and Donald Trump is threatening another country's leadership